Welcome to Coast Creatives, a podcast for and about working professional artists within the entertainment industry. I'm Joe Funk, and along with my co-host, Torin Cavens Flores, we interview actors, directors, photographers, writers, and many, many more. Today, we're chatting with Atlanta actor Austin Freeman. You can currently check out Austin in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, where he gives the on-set performance for Groot. Born and raised in the Southeast, Austin talks about the film scene in Atlanta, including his thoughts on the craft of the self-tape audition. He also dives deep into the methodology and psychology of acting and how his theater training helped inform his performances on screen. And, of course, he shares some wonderful stories from the set of Guardians 3. Without further ado, let's chat with Austin Freeman.
Hey everybody, welcome to Coast Creatives. Today on this episode, we have fellow actor and On-Set Groot for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Austin Freeman.
What's up?
How are you, buddy?
I'm excited to be here, man. Good to see you guys.
Guardians 3 and the Christmas special.
That's right. Yeah.
That is amazing. That is so cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
How has it been for you these past couple of weeks, I suppose, leading up to the premiere?
Yeah. So the last couple of weeks before leading up to the premiere, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster because it's been about a year and a half that I haven't been able to talk about this.
Yeah.
So I started on this job in 2021. So yeah, since then I've been kind of gagged. Haven't been able to say anything. So it's been kind of fun. Like, okay, we're almost there. I can like finally say things and
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of my questions. You already jumped into it.
Oh yeah. Hey man, I looked at the notes.
I know that
Cheater.
I didn't actually look at the notes.
Marvel, Disney, they have some ironclad NDAs.
Yeah,
that
their lawyers are scary. They
I was gonna ask how
they'll
how
bust
is
you.
that?
I guess I don't know.
What was it like going through that process?
The process of just keeping quiet about things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty much you expect it anytime you work on like a big kind of high line budget project like that, and you know that Marvel especially they take such, because they've created such a universal world and everything like ties in so intricately to the next project. So you expect them to be like, hey, you can't say a word, because there are people out there who would figure out and read between the lines of anything that you could say just as a normal fan or whatever, that could absolutely read between the lines and like go, oh, that's going to introduce this new character. And like, I would have no idea. Yeah. So yeah, I just was like, okay, I'm not saying anything.
Yeah.
I'm very quiet about it.
What was it like keeping that from your family and friends?
It was good. It was, there were some people that kind of knew, because there are, hundreds of people on set.
Yeah.
And so, like for most of the big actors on the film, they would put just like their first and last initial to like sort of protect them, although everybody knows who they are on the films. But on mine, they just had my full name like beside my character title the entire production. So they're like, 200 call sheets with my name on them.
Yeah.
And there were lots of local people that are from crew and actors and everything in between that were like working on this project. So it was not really a secret in some ways, I think.
Sure.
But I did my very best not to, and I never posted anything anywhere, because you don't want to step over the line.
Oh, they'll go after you. Like,
Oh,
I know,
100%.
yeah, just for like the listeners that don't know all about this kind of stuff, even when I audition for Disney,
Oh yeah.
they give me a non-disclosure agreement to sign.
Yeah.
I've had to
it's
sign
intense.
the NDAs just as the reader.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For some auditions before.
That's
Yeah.
a lot of the Marvel projects in general, is that
Yeah.
even when you're auditioning, your reader, or like they had that for Walking Dead for a while, they had it for a lot of like big shows that have a huge fan base.
Yeah.
Where if you're involved in the process in any way, you got to be quiet.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were quiet.
Good.
Good. Why take the chance? right?
Yeah. Don't want to step over the line.
And now you're going out there, you're going to premieres, you're doing podcasts.
Yeah, it's fun to talk about things. Even now, I'm like, are there things I can say?
Right.
No,
Right.
I'm sure it's fine now because I don't know anything, which is great.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, we kept it really quiet. Like even like I have a publicist, and like I spoke with them, and like, can we go do any press just to preload it, and then when the movie comes out and like I'm announced or whatever, then we can release everything at once, and that would be kind of cool. But then the studio was like, no, you can't do anything because, first of all, Vin Diesel is still credited as the character, because he is the name that's attached to it, and he's been since Project One. So they didn't want to confuse fans that he's not attached to the project anymore. So it became one of those things where it's like, well, you can't put anything out there press-wise, because then it seems like you're the guy that's like taken over the role in some capacity. And so, yeah, basically our hands were tied for press or anything. So I kept quiet until the pictures from the premiere dropped, and then I was like, okay, I can probably say something now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's specific in the end credits as well. It says On-Set Groot.
That's right.
Austin Freeman.
Yeah.
Just so there's no confusion, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of like the contract negotiations and things like that, like how you're credited and everything. So those are things that we pre-negotiated, but it was still they were very, very staunch on it. So we respected that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Respect the mouse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got big lawyers.
So take us back a little bit. You are born and raised in the Southeast, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
South Carolina?
So, yeah, I was born in Anderson, South Carolina, and I was raised in a town in northeast Georgia, right on the South Carolina border, called Hartwell, Georgia. And born in Anderson because my town was so small that even the hospital system there was not great. So there were a lot of people that would kind of go across the state line to the best, like, sort of regional hospital and, have children there. But, yeah, I grew up in Hartwell. My family's all still there. It's about 2 hours northeast of Atlanta. There's a big lake there. My family's real established there. Like, my grandpa helped kind of build the lake. He's the county surveyor still. He's in his 80s and he still works and loves it. So I kind of grew up working with him. And my mom and my dad, my stepdad, and my youngest sister lives there. And then my aunts and uncles and everybody, they're all there.
Okay.
My
nice.
goodness.
Yeah.
That's not a bad trip either.
No,
If you
it's
like
not.
your family,
It's
cool.
Easy. 2 hours
2
away,
hours, yeah.
so can get up there easily, and like it's cool. I can go up for holidays and birthdays and any kind of special events and stuff like that. Just weekend away, and it's a pretty town, so you can go up and go to the lake, and like our family's got a boat, so like I'll go out with the family on the boat sometimes, and yeah, it's a cool place to kind of go if you like the outdoors, especially.
Very cool. And how long have you been in Atlanta now?
I've been in Atlanta about I think 9 years now. I moved here at the very, very tail end of 2014, and then kind of really settled in like early 2015.
And did you move here specifically for acting?
Yeah, I moved here for acting. After college, I was going to move to LA and like go to the LA version of this, and I ended up moving back home for about a year. And while I was back home, I was training in Greenville, South Carolina, with this acting teacher from LA. And he kept just saying like, oh, I keep hearing that Atlanta is kind of becoming this place. It's kind of becoming this new kind of booming market. And this was like 2014, 2013, somewhere in there. And I was like, okay, yeah, I might try it, whatever. And so basically he got me signed with his agent out of South Carolina. And I started like auditioning a lot. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll go try this Atlanta thing. And like, I'll give it like a year or two because it's not far from home. It's easy to get there. So like I moved down here, and this is something we were talking about earlier, is that Atlanta has a really strong commercial market. So when I moved down here, my first year, I booked like 13 commercials, and I was like, oh shit, like you can make money doing this.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And like one or two of those was like a SAG National. So it was like, okay, yeah, you can like settle in.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing commercial work for like probably like 2 years pretty consistently. And I still audition and work pretty consistently commercially, but it was probably about 2016, 2017 that I started like sort of like dabbling really more often in like sort of lower level, like independent film, smaller TV shows, stuff like that. And then 2018, I started like kind of really working, and like kind of been working since.
Wow. I always love to ask people that have been here for that long, what is it like watching the film industry grow in Georgia?
I feel like when I got here, there were already some like super strong productions. So it just kind of felt like it was, okay, like this year we've got, 20 productions. Next year we've got 30 productions, 40, whatever. So it felt like an incremental growth. I didn't really see anything like explode overnight. Like I got tied in pretty quickly with some like pretty strong actors in town who were always auditioning for really big stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's just what people do here. And then it just became more and more. And so, like, I have friends that have booked series regulars and movie leads and stuff like that out of this market. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's really cool. And then you hear things like, oh, wow, like with Marvel moving here with, like, down at Trilith Studios, and, you know, like big productions like Walking Dead and various other things, Resident, you know, like lots of big shows in town. It just was like, oh, okay, so Atlanta's actually leading the charge in some ways for film production for several years because of the great tax incentives. And then you realize, like, oh, okay, so this market has actually been booming for a little while, and, like, people just didn't know about it.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, like Joe tells the story a lot of when he graduated college, which was back in 2011. And he was talking to his counselor, and even back then, they were like, well, you can go to LA or New York, but there is something like bubbling in Atlanta.
Like whisperings, yeah.
Yeah, already back then. And
Yeah.
yeah.
So that was about the time, because I graduated in 2012, and so it was about the same time. And like right after school, I was doing a summer stock theater show in Cherokee, North Carolina, and so like I finished up my contract with the show and was doing theater, and that's what I had trained in. You know, I'd done a theater program, and I was like, okay, theater acting is like what I knew, and so like I did professional theater for a couple of years, and then like I was like, well, you can't really make any money doing theater. You just can't. Like, even if you're in New York, like, you're making Broadway money, but you're living in New York prices.
New York, yeah.
So it's like, unless you're just really constantly working in regional theater and you've got some kind of name, like, you're just not really going to make much money. And I was like, okay, well, film seems to make more sense in, like, a lucrative sense. So I was like, okay, let's try. Plus, I've always loved movies. I mean, I've always loved movies and TV shows. So, you know, it's like, I think if I thought about it, like doing a film program when I was coming out of high school, then I might have done that, gone to like New York or LA or something and tried to do like a film program. But like, I'm really happy that I did my theater training, because there's so much like good that's tied into that. That's like, it's like you learn how to run the marathon of a theater production.
Yeah, and I tell all my students as well, because theater actors, we learn a lot of technique, you know, and a lot of the film schools don't have that technique for actors, you know. It's you're learning film, you know, equipment and all of that. And so I always tell my students that technique offers longevity for your career, you know. It's like, learn something, have something to pull from consistently, you know, learn several techniques if you want, but like at least have one that you can pull from at all times if you need it, because that's going to create longevity for your career and it also, sustainability.
Yeah, and it also helps you, like, there are times when you're working on a role or you're doing a scene or whatever, and you're like, I don't quite get this. And it doesn't click for you either in like some kind of emotional sense, or you don't understand, like, okay, what is the writer trying to say here? What is this scene trying to accomplish? How does it fit into the larger picture of the movie or the show? And then you can go right back to the technique and just kind of just play around with some of that stuff, and you go, oh shit, that's it. That's how it fits in. So like, it helps you discover things too, which is kind of cool.
Exactly. If you need it, it's there.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, yes, sometimes you read a piece and you're like, oh, I don't need to do any work on this because I get it.
Yeah.
I just get it.
Yeah.
But when you don't, bada bing, technique. Yeah. There you go. You know, I think it's so important. And when I majored in it in college, I went to the National Theater Conservatory, and I am forever grateful for that knowledge and that training.
Yep.
Forever.
And it's safe to say you're happy here in Atlanta. You're happy with how it's gone here. Like you said, like, you had the option to go to Los Angeles, New York, and this is something I talk about all the time as well. We live in this time where you don't necessarily have to live in one of those hubs.
That's true.
There's so many other networks that are popping up, probably even in your home state, in North Carolina and South Carolina. A lot of these states have witnessed what has happened here in Georgia and are trying to get in on the game, trying to change those tax incentives.
Well, and there were even, like, North Carolina had great tax incentives for a long time, and then kind of their state representatives started messing with it a little bit, and you saw it just about overnight. Everything packed up and left, because this is a gypsy lifestyle. So it makes sense for like the bottom line for like the producers who are producing these projects. They're like, okay, well, we can literally go a state away and have a much more, just a tax incentive or whatever, some kind of incentive from the state that makes a lot more sense for our money. So they come here and do it, and it makes sense. And the cool thing is that Georgia as a state has such diverse landscape. We've got the talent pool here. We've got some of the best state-of-the-art studios that have been built. I mean, we've got just about everything you need. You've got mountains, you've got city, you've got beach, you've got wooded, you've got suburban, you've got everything.
Yeah. I think what really threw me off was I was living in LA at the time, and that Baywatch movie.
Oh, yeah.
With The Rock came out, and that was shot in Georgia.
That's hilarious.
They're definitely going for a West Coast beach, Muscle Beach vibe with that movie. And I saw that, and I was like, oh, okay, they do have other landscapes there, because that is something that California will tout as well, is they'll talk about, we have everything here, which is also true.
It's true, 100%.
Yeah.
And they've got, with California, I mean, they've got the OG status too. Everybody there knows the talk of film. Yeah. So because that's the film town, the tinsel town, like they understand the silver screen there more than we do. So there are more of, like, especially the post-production things, the services out there that we just don't have yet.
Right.
But give it a little time, and we're gonna have everything, and it's gonna be full package here, I think.
Yeah, and people here are there's so much pride for being a part of the Atlanta film community as well.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily see in every market.
Yeah,
people here, they love it. They want it to stay here, and they want to grow, like you're talking about, like the post production.
Yeah,
it's true. There's not a lot of post production facilities that are stationed here, but give it time. We'll see what it turns into.
That's one thing that I do like, to kind of come back to your question too. Like, I do love the community here, and like the actors here in town. The actors here in the film community here, these are like my best friends. These are my people. And so, yeah, I'm really happy here because there's a lot of that love within the community of like people like really supporting each other, really wanting to see and help and be involved and grow the market. And like, hey man, you booked that role. That, like, a lot of the guys that like I kind of compete against are like good friends of mine, because I see them all the time in auditions. We're all going out for the same things. We know the same struggles. We know the bullshit rigmarole of like, okay, this is what casting is going to do. Okay, this is really not quite my type. That's more your type, but I'm going to see you there. We're both going to, be in the ring kind of thing. So it's like you become friends and you root for those people too. And if I don't book it, then hell yeah, I want my friend to book it. That's awesome. Like, oh, dude, I remember that role. It was a great audition. So like, that's really cool too, to just kind of see like that really supportive kind of family kind of community mindset here. And everybody here is like kind of hungry for it. They want to see the market grow, and when they see like a big win for anybody, they're like, oh wow, that raises, the tide rises all ships, right? So that's one thing that I really think is like unique here, and it doesn't have kind of that kind of jaded burnout sense that I hear from some of the other older markets.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, it's so refreshing here to feel the eagerness to learn, as opposed to I know everything, kind of thing. And as actors and filmmakers, artists in general, we never stop learning. Like, to be the best, you have to realize that you're always going to be learning.
Yep.
Yeah. People ask about, because we spent almost a decade in LA. Torrin and I both lived there, and everyone asks, well, should I move to Atlanta? What do you think? What's your opinion on the city? And I always tell people, like, it's not right of me to say whether you should do it or not, but find a place that speaks to you and speaks to your soul. Kind of what you were talking about, where like you like the community here, you like the people. Someone might have that in Los Angeles, and that's totally fine, or New York, or Albuquerque, or Vancouver.
Yeah.
But it's good to sample. It's good to like get a taste of this, get a taste of that, and figure out what you like.
Yeah.
If you get to the level that you aspire to in your career, you will work in these other cities.
Well, and that's the cool thing about kind of where we are too, because Atlanta was on the front end of the self-tape market. So we kind of like, I don't know if we like necessarily like created it, but we definitely refined it. And so we've been doing it for, over a decade. So that's really interesting to see, especially like after COVID, with 2020, like everybody reverting back to and like learning how to really create really polished self-tapes. Now that so much that I don't know if casting is ever really going to go back into the room, not for everybody. I think there's always going to be a demand for self-tapes because you can see more actors. You can do it from the comfort of your couch or wherever you're, for casting. The producers and directors, they can all just kind of look, okay, click, 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 okay, boom, done, this works. So I think that now it does give that freedom to, like, if I want to live in Montana, I could.
Right.
As long as I got internet and I got access to a camera, who cares?
Right.
Like, if you like me, you're going to fly me out anyways, so who cares? Like, a flight from Missoula is no different than a flight from Atlanta.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about self-tapes, because it has been the practice of self-tape here in Atlanta even before COVID.
Yeah.
My wife is from Atlanta, and she moved back here. She was acting in Los Angeles, and she came back here, and she was saying, "Oh yeah, they're all on self-tapes." And a lot of actors have a love-hate relationship with self-tape. Where do you fall on it?
So I like self-taping because for me, like, I kind of have like an unspoken rule with a lot of like my taping partners. For me, I like to prep everything beforehand, like kind of that theater mentality. Like, I generally like to know kind of where everything's going with, like, okay, I've got 2 versions of how I want to try this, right? And then I like to try to do it in 3 takes or less. Like, I don't want to go and do 30 takes. It actually annoys me. Like, I'm like, if I can't get it in 5, okay, 5, I'm done. That's what I got. Because on set, most of the time, you don't get the chance to really do that. And so it's like, I'll tape with friends sometimes, and like, they'll drill it. And I'm like, dude, you got to just trust your gut here and just choose one. Because there are some things that you can find in that process, like, oh shit, that line reads completely differently, and it changes the way that you interpret the scene, sure. But also, like, I like the idea of, especially if you go in the room, you get 1, maybe 2 takes. And then they're like, all right, next, get out.
Yeah, Joe was just smiling at me across the table because I feel the same way of like 3 or less.
Yeah.
And yeah, everything that you just said, like if you go into a room, it's give us what you got. That's done.
Yep.
And
you don't really get a lot of feedback most of the time.
Most of the time, no. And I think everybody has their process.
Yeah.
I like to try and get it in 3 or less, just kind of to work the muscle of, being able to work in a crunch amount of time,
And also, like, when you're on set, that may be all you get sometimes, especially depending on who you're working with. Like, there are people in town that shoot in 1 take, and then they're moving on.
Yeah.
I was part of a Tyler Perry production, The Oval, and he just, like, I asked the person that I was in the scene with, Russell Thomas, he plays Vice President Eli on that show. Mm-hmm. We had a scene together, and I had never done a Tyler Perry project before. And I was like, okay, so how's this work? Because he seems to be moving pretty fast. And he's like, yeah, don't do a lot of takes. And I'm like, okay, so we talking like 3? And he's like, more like 1.
We don't do a lot.
And I'm like, what? And he's just like, yeah, Tyler Perry, like, rolls the camera. And then if you need to, like, jump back a little bit, he'll be like, okay, 2 lines back, keep going. And then, he'll just cut it. And so it's 1 take. And technically.
Another director that you have both been able to witness work that has that same mentality is Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
So, I mean, like that was like my first like kind of big booking was in 2018 when I booked the Mule. And, I was on that project for probably like 4 months working with Clint. And I mean, he works 8-hour days. Like, I mean, and sometimes it's 6-hour days, which is crazy. But, I mean, he's in and out. And when he was shooting that, he was 88 years old. So it's not like he's trying to sit around for 12 hours on set directing and acting. And he was starring in the movie, too. So, I mean, you're doing 2-3 tops. And then you're switching angles and you're going on. And the cool thing is like, since he's worked with that crew for so long, they've worked, 20-plus years. They're a well-oiled machine. He trusts his people. They sit down. Okay, here's the shot we got set up. Boom, boom. And everybody calls Clint the boss. He comes on set, he's the boss, which is just hilarious and awesome. And, he comes in and he calls out the shot, and then you're rolling. And it's never like action. It's always just like,
go
whenever you're ready.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Or
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people will be like standing around, especially their first time. They're like, wait, oh shit, we're rolling. Okay, all right, yeah.
Yeah.
It's always just
'Cause
so
he's so
quiet.
quiet about
it's
it,
so
too.
quiet. There's no like, all right, God, there's no like bells ringing, any of that kind of stuff.
It really is like chill, or not chill, but quiet sets.
Yeah.
Like he just has this energy, you want to call it, to him. Just
Well, I mean,
kind of
he's
comes in and it's
Fucking
just
Clint
kind of like,
Eastwood, man.
yeah. And I mean, the whole room just kind of like gets insulated and
Yeah.
quiet. And yeah, he just
Talk about setting the
3
tone.
tops,
Yeah.
3 takes tops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really cool, and like that comes back to it. I mean, this is kind of my perspective on acting. To come back to technique, so I personally kind of follow the rules of like practical aesthetics, which is there's a lot of this. Like I'm a big fan of like David Mamet. One of my favorite books of his is a book called True and False. It was given to me by a theater teacher, and he talks about in a lot of this. It's like the character that you're crafting and creating. It doesn't live in the ether somewhere. It's in you. And so really what you're doing is just, okay, I've wanted to kill somebody before. I've wanted to be with that girl before. I've wanted to rob this, whatever. I've wanted those things within myself. So it's just finding that and tapping into that flavor of yourself, or that kind of like color or part of yourself or whatever. And then it's hitting your mark and saying your lines. Because the writing does its job. If it's good writing, it does its job. And it's connecting with the other person. It's saying your lines, and it moves the story along. That's really all it is. Because the idea is that you can never really, there are some people who can do it, but like the idea is that you can never really create a character that's more complex than yourself. And so I like that, because it's like, okay, I walk in and I can play versions of myself, but nobody's going to believe that I'm a bodybuilder when you see me. Like nobody's going to really believe that. Like you don't really get drug lured from my vibe. There are some people who've broken out of that mold, Bryan Cranston, people like this, right? But at the end of the day, it's like all you can do is just, in my view, all you can do is find those truthful things within yourself and then amplify them a little bit to play the character.
Yeah, we all have these things inside of us, even on a small level. We all share these same kind of feelings, and it's just a matter of tapping into them, like you were saying. I do agree with that.
And maybe even like commitment to it. Maybe that's like some of the key too, is like just committing to whatever it is, like that murder within yourself, like committing to that.
And that's a thing that gets a bunch of students that I've seen so far teaching here, is that commitment. They get that confused with like pushing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, don't push anything. It's all in here.
Mm-hmm.
So just connect with that and it'll come out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does this internal work look like for you when you're working on a project, when you're trying to tap in and relate to a character and find those qualities within yourself? How do you do that? Some people do journaling, some go through meditation, some just look over the script. What is your preferred method?
My preferred method for finding that actually lies in the other people that I'm working with.
Oh.
So for me, I've noticed that I can drill a script all day long. I can drill it all day long. I can try and bring technique to it. I can do all of that kind of stuff, but nothing ever really settles into my body until I'm working across from somebody. And once it's that, I don't even need the lines generally, because it's like things generally flow. If you're connected, like for me, it's always about just the connection with the other actor. So you can step on set. I've read the script, or I've read the sides, or whatever it is, the scene that we're doing. I have an idea of generally what's happening here. I have an idea of generally what the lines are. And most of the time I have a very good idea because I've prepped it, right? But once you step on and the crew has created a world for you that lends itself to telling that story, you've got a set. You've got a bar that you're at, or a bed that you're in, or whatever, you know? You've got the lights rolling. You've got the fog coming in, you know, for the atmosphere. So it's really not that hard once you're in that created setting to dial in, and then you just connect with the other person. That, for me, that's what anchors everything. The lines make sense. The setting makes sense. The the meaning of the scene and how it fits into the greater story makes sense. So yeah, it's just connecting with the other people.
And it is so easy when all of that comes together. The set helps, your wardrobe helps, and of course, the other actors help.
Yeah.
Feeding off of that and being connected. The hard part is learning how to be connected.
Yeah.
That is something that everybody seems to have trouble with. It's, because it becomes selfish.
Mm-hmm.
You it's all about the script. It's all about my lines, all of that. So connecting takes a back seat, and it has to be right in the front.
That's the other thing too that's like different about auditioning versus being on set and acting. Like auditioning is a different skill because you have to create
100%.
You have to create that setting for yourself. Because there are actors that like, man, it's like hard for me to cry on cue and things like that. Man, you go on set, people are using tear sticks. So do that for yourself here. Like when you're auditioning, doing your scene, give yourself a little something, because once those tears start flowing, I promise you the emotion's going to follow. The connection is going to follow.
Yeah.
So there are things like little tricks of the trade that people will do even in their auditions that grounds the scene and it makes it real for you. And if it's real for you, then the viewer's going to believe it.
Oh, yeah. Because, an audience can, whether it's, a full audience or it's the casting director looking at your tape, can call bullshit a mile away.
Camera knows. Yep.
A mile away. Even if it's live theater, you can call it out when someone's bullshitting. And, like you said, it is a different skill.
It is. Any teacher in town too that's like worth their salt, they'll tell you that, because auditioning isn't acting. Yes, there's an element of acting to it because you're doing that, you're performing, but you're sitting in your basement or you're in a tiny 5x5 room somewhere, or even worse, you're going not to like to shit on paying for auditioning, but you're going and you're like, I have 30 minutes to get this. And you're paying, $50 or whatever, and you're like, and I don't really have $50 to pay right now, or whatever it is, and I have 4 more auditions this week where I have to do this. Okay, that's another $150. Okay, so now I have to pick up extra hours at my job. So like all that shit starts creeping in. When like this same this is actually hilarious, and I'm shouting out Rob Fulton, who was like one of my theater professors in college, same one that gave me the David Mamet book. He taught me a great lesson whenever we were doing a show. We were doing this show called Out of Order when I was in college, and every night when we came into rehearsal, there was a doormat when you're walking into the black box that we were using. And when we cut to the theater, every single person in the cast and the crew would take 3 seconds. They'd stand on the doormat, wipe their feet, leave that shit at the door, and you'd go in and you'd work, because this was like our sacred space at that point in time. So like I love that mentality. If I can find that within the audition process, then it changes. So there's a lot of things that are constantly kind of warring when you're auditioning that you don't have on set. But also, to be fair, on set you got a guy booming right 6 inches above your eye line, and like the camera's moving, and you've got to dance around the camera operator as he's on a steady, and there are other things to contend with there. But there you've got another professional who you're connected in with, actor wise. And your job is there. All the other shit is just around you.
That's
matter.
Where connection is key, because you have so much other stuff going on. Film set, it's like it's the boom, it's the camera operator. Theater, it's the rest of the audience.
And in theater, you don't get to stop. You press play and you got to figure that shit out.
Yeah.
Oh, you skipped a paragraph. Okay. All right, let's figure it out. Let's keep going. And if you don't do it well, if you don't have finesse with it, the audience, they go, oh, they missed something there, which is like fun. Like that's the dance of the two worlds, right? Like on set, you've got a whole crew that's working their asses off around you. They work way harder than we do in a lot of ways. So love to the crew, but you've got all of that that's sometimes blocking your emotional connection with your other actor. And on stage, you've got, 500 people in the house watching you, and they can hear, you can hear a pin drop or somebody's phone going off in the audience or whatever. And that's the dance. That's part of the reason why we do this, because it's different in so many different forms there, but it's like so fucking fun.
that random cough when like the lights go down in the audience and
Oh,
you just
every
hear
time.
a
Yeah.
it's like every show.
That was
swear to God.
that cough was a paid actor. I know that cough.
Do you miss doing live theater?
Man, that's actually a really good transition because there's like a power in theater that you don't get on set in that. I mean, I have some like pretty like very, very vivid transformative moments on stage for myself where I'm like, holy shit, like I've never felt something like that before. Where like you're doing a show, a show for a packed house with 2,000 or 3,000 people in the house, and it's a huge place, right? And like be standing behind the curtain in like a proscenium stage, you can see a little bit of the light coming from under the curtain, and once those lights dim, and it's just like a whew,
Yeah.
it's like that hush that comes over the audience, and like it electrifies your body, and you're like, holy shit, it's showtime. So that I miss. That's cool. I do miss theater in some ways just because I've made some of my best friends doing theater productions because it is shared trauma in a lot of ways because
trauma bonding.
you are in the trenches together when it comes to some of that stuff. It's the same thing on like some independent films. When you go on a big budget production, like everybody's got their own trailer. They, oh, can I get you a water? Like they got you like every step of the way. Like independent films where you're like also booming and you're also like moving chairs around and you're sweating your ass off and then doing the scene and then partying together or whatever afterwards. And the same thing with like theater. I mean, it's a different experience, and it's like there's blood, sweat, and tears in those projects that you don't quite get when you're pampered, that you do miss in some ways, because that like feels like the art sometimes. Like that feels like the grind of like creating art with like other creatives. But there's nothing like being on set either. So I mean, they're just so different. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna do theater again.
Oh, good.
It's like that's my first love, and that's where I really kind of fell in love and like was like, oh, this is my thing. So I'll be back. Don't worry, girl, I'm coming back.
I was worried.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of actors that they seem to have the same mentality as you, where they like to go back to it and just tap into, okay, this is what I love about it. This is what I love about acting, and just that energy.
Yeah.
From being on stage.
Well, and that's the thing too that theater school and film school don't train you for, is the business of acting, the business of being a professional creative, where you audition for 100 projects and you book one, maybe.
Yeah. And
it's constantly no, or constantly, not quite, you're too tall, too short, too big, too small, whatever. Like hair's too dark. It reminds me of an ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend. There's so many things like that you are not prepared for when you're going through school and you're in a nice creative space and you're kind of like cutting your teeth and learning that. And that's why you see so many artists, especially actors on high levels, high profile, that go and they disappear for a while and they go back to the source, whether it's theater or they go into meditation or they go into camping. Like I'm a huge outdoorsman, so like I love the outdoors. That's kind of like my place where I find solace. So it's like whenever I have a thing like that where I'm like, I need to figure out why it is that I'm doing this, then like you probably won't hear from me for like a couple of weeks because I'm going to be hiking somewhere or like I'm posted up like in a beautiful location if I can afford it and go, or like I'm just going to go and like rent a campsite somewhere just to be away from it all for a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of that of just like going back and tapping into the source again, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it's something that Torrin and I had to get used to when we moved here, was how easy it is to get out in nature.
Oh yeah,
here, just to go back to that LA,
like,
LA, and
your backyard.
Atlanta.
I mean, that's nothing but trees, man. You live on the river,
Yeah.
so it's like
literally you hop our fence in the backyard, and that's a national forest.
Yeah. Oh, even better.
And there's
so you can't touch it.
There's an amazing trail back there. It's like
That's
a
awesome.
waterfall and shit.
You're right near like the main line Chattahoochee, so it's like you can like hop in the water anytime you want. That's awesome.
Shoot the hooch.
It's wonderful. It's beautiful here. So let's jump to. I'm really excited to talk about some of the technique stuff once we get into what you were doing on set in Guardians. But let's talk a little bit about, because we've talked about self-tape. Let's talk about the audition process for that project.
Okay, so the audition for Guardians was non-existent. I didn't audition for this project. The way that kind of worked was when it came through local casting had an idea of what it was. They thought it was Groot. they weren't quite sure. It seemed like there was a little like we're pretty sure this is what it is, but it didn't seem very clear. And so they reached out to I think I don't know if they only reached out to my agent or if they reached out to several in town, but they basically said, hey, this is what we need specs wise, like body type wise, and we need somebody who can hang and like has chops to like work with all of these actors for the whole because it's run of picture. So my agent, this is the way that he explained it to me. He pitched one person that was an exact match for the description that they gave. And casting was like, no, he's not quite right. He's not quite the right energy for it. And so they pitched me because I'm a little taller than what they had said. So they're like, okay, well, what about Austin? And casting was like, oh, that's actually perfect. And I had just done Loki. So I did the Loki streaming show on Disney+. And so the way that I've heard it told is that some of the producers from Loki like reached out on my behalf and said that they loved working with me and like that Tom Hiddleston liked working with me and like they liked the professionalism and they thought I would do good in the role basically. And that's how I got it. I didn't audition. There was no process for that. And I was actually camping when I booked the job, which is hilarious.
Nice.
I was camping with like 4 or 5 of my friends. We're like on the lake in my hometown. And my agent calls me and he's like, hey man, my agent, Jason, he always does this. Hey man, what are you doing? And it's always, I'm like, what's up, buddy? Like, I always know that there's like there's something fun when he's like that. And he's like, yeah, so your life's about to change. I was like, oh shit, what? Because like you audition for things and you forget about it, right? Because it may be months before you hear anything, right?
Yeah.
And so he's like, you're gonna be Groot. I was like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, man, you got it. So like, I was like, what the,
Yeah.
And so like, I was like kind of in shock for a little bit. And so, but yeah, I mean, there was no audition process. It was, I don't know if you would call that like a direct offer, but it was like, it kind of cut through the chaff of the audition process in that regard.
That shows how important it is to
Not be an asshole.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's what I hear.
be professional.
Yeah.
Show up on time, know your lines, get along with everybody. Even if there's somebody that you don't particularly vibe with on set, don't go looking to burn bridges.
Nope, because you don't know if that person is going to be producing something soon or whatever. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, I'm kind of the mindset that it doesn't matter like what your position is. Like you just kind of treat people equally like across the board. And guess what? That shit, it's so good. It makes it so easy. And
It
so
goes a long way.
it does.
And it takes way less energy to just be nice.
That's true.
Don't be mean.
Yeah.
You're
I
going to
don't
be
have the time for that.
exhausted
Yeah.
if you're just mean all the
I don't
time.
have the energy for that, man. I don't.
Put that good energy out there, and then it's going to come back to you. And there's many stories like this where they're not auditioning for it, and it's okay. I liked working with you. Come aboard this project. Come do this. Whole careers have been built on that.
Well, and that's the cool thing about kind of seeing the way that things worked with this project with James Gunn too, because I would say 80% of the kind of the supporting roles in this movie were just friends of James, either friends or people that had worked with him before.
Yeah.
And so it was like he just brings people along to projects that he likes, it seems, and that's awesome. Like I would love to be in that position, be like, hey man, like, all right, I'm bringing all my friends on this project. We're going to have a great time, and we're just going to laugh the entire time and make a great movie together because you're all professionals and you're good at what you do, and I respect you, and I want to give you work because guess what? I'm in that position right now. So what a cool spot.
Yeah, and James Gunn is known for exactly what you're talking about, where he if he likes you, he brings you on for other projects. You can see it with the actors.
Yeah.
They're all people that he's worked with before. I'm sure the crew is like that. What is it like stepping into the holiday special and then the third installment in the trilogy of this family that has been growing?
Yeah, so I mean that was a really interesting process because I knew coming in, like, I'm the new guy here and I'm on the bottom of the totem pole. Like I'm stepping into a position that other people have done before. So I try to just come in and just like basically just be myself, like how I normally am. Like I don't really meet strangers. Like I can talk to anybody. Like I'm a little bit of an introvert, but like you talk to me, like I can go, right? So I remember like I had a meet and greet with James and with some of like the first AD and the second AD before filming started. And this was when they were still doing some work on like some of the green screens with some of the characters, Lila and Rocket and Floor and Teefs. And I don't know if you guys have seen the movie, but these are okay. So these are all like very important characters in Rocket's past, and so there's kind of a tone on set those days because of what the material is that they're shooting. So I come in for a meet and greet to meet James and to meet the first AD, and I'm being introduced by the second AD to everybody. So I come in, I'm like a little nervous, because it's like a huge project, and I'm kind of like just the new guy there. So everybody was super nice. Everybody was like really welcoming. And then that was on a Friday, and then I think I started working on a Monday, like the following Monday. So went home for the weekend, really not a lot to prep, I know my lines. Good to go.
Yeah.
So I went home and basically, like for my prep, I just looked at some movement stuff. So I was looking at like, how do I want to create movement for this character? Because it's not the previous versions of Groot. And a lot of what I do, they're probably going to change and post anyways, because they can do anything digitally. So they can render it and change it. So I come in on Monday, and one of the first Guardian that I met was Karen Gillan, who plays Nebula. And I didn't really know Karen. I'd never worked with her before, and I didn't really know like her personality. I knew she had done some other things with Doctor Who and Jumanji and a bunch of other like films and things. But I really kind of knew her personality as Nebula, who's not a very nice person, So she has that kind of like stoic, robotic face because they've got her in this kind of prosthetic piece that like is like glued to her, basically. It's like a skin tight thing to her face. And I was like, okay, well, let's go say hello. So I went up and introduced myself. I was like, hey, Karen, I'm Austin. I'm playing Groot. And her face just transformed. And she's like, oh, hello. And she was like this lovely, so sweet Scottish girl. And she just like hugs me. It was like, oh, welcome in. And I was like, oh, okay, you're really nice. So she was like one of the nicest people to work with the entire time. So sweet, so bubbly, like dances and sings the whole time. And then that's kind of how everybody has that same energy. Like Chris Pratt, he has the biggest energy of anybody I've ever worked with, I think. I mean, you walk into a soundstage and it's like, probably 10,000 square feet, and it doesn't matter where you are on that soundstage. As soon as he walks in the door, he's there. So he's just like, whoa, what's up, everybody? Like cracking jokes the whole time and just making everybody feel good, and like so cool. And he's an avid golfer, and I'm a big golfer. So I was like, we got to talk about that. And Zoe is like so like just sweet and refined. You can tell that she seems like she was like a dancer or something. She like kind of has like a ballet like posture, and so sweet, and just loves her kids and is like so proud of them. And then like Dave Bautista, he, I watched him in wrestling growing up, and is like, he's just like this big dude, is like super quiet all the time, and he just kind of has like a rumbling laugh, and he's like super funny. Like everything he does is Drax. Like Drax is he might be my favorite Guardian, actually, just because I love everything that he does in the movies.
Yeah.
And Dave is like, he's really not that. He's just like he's a lot more quiet, and he's a lot more introspective, and he's like really a deep person. And so it's like so funny that he's like playing such an airhead. And then, I mean, like everybody's just so cool. Like Palm, who plays Mantis, is just like so goofy, fun energy all the time, just cracking jokes, and has like little fun voices that she does. And you could tell that everybody just really loves each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Sean, who is Kraglin, that's his character name. And then he also does basically everything for Rocket on set.
Yeah.
So, and he's been there since the beginning, and he's, James' brother, and he's a very established actor, and he's been working for a long time, and just as nice and down to earth as can be. And
did he give you a lot of insight in how to approach the role, like this on set? You're playing this character that, is it motion capture what they're doing for you?
yes, sorta.
Okay.
So like I didn't have like little dots all over my face. They're like changing. They basically have this. They have a practical effect head that they come in and like they create like a reference point.
Yeah.
But it's all like 3D mapped. So it's like everything. Like I was actually watching a video by Stefan Soretti, who was like our VFX like supervisor.
Yeah.
And I was watching. Marvel just posted it, I think, like yesterday or the day before. And you see like how they digitally scan everything. Like the sets, you go in and they 3D scan you and every single outfit that you're in, because later on they can digitally insert you into the thing.
Yeah.
and then they can adjust things. So yes, like basically a lot of what we're doing is reference point. So we're reference points because I have a pattern suit on that they lock onto, and then they can render over and whatever it is that they do. And I'm there to interact with the other actors, to deliver the lines, and to do like interaction with items. And it is motion capture in a lot of ways, but there is still like because Groot is such an interesting character because it's two people plus digital.
Yeah.
So it's my body, then they digitize my body and can do things with it that they want. And then Vin comes in at the end, I guess after everything's been sort of rendered, and then he delivers the I Am Groots the way that I'm sure he does a session with James, and they sit in and, they're doing this basically. And then, but there's, the subtext behind what it all means and everything. So yeah, it was an interesting process. Sean did give me a little bit of that kind of stuff. And then some of it, I kind of was just like, all right, I'm just going to watch and learn on my toes here. And like, that was a lot of it. So it's pretty cool.
It sounds like motion capture has come such a long way from like Andy Serkis as Gollum. You see pictures of that on set, and he's covered in little dots. He's got this huge thing on his head. It sounds like it's come a long way.
And he's like, I don't even know if that may be like even performance capture.
It's because he was he was hunched over and crawling and all of that, delivering all the lines.
I think they were basing even the final rendering off of his facial expressions and,
so it is different.
That would be super fun. I mean, but you even see like Benedict Cumberbatch doing it for Smaug.
Yeah.
So he's doing the same thing where he's crawling around and they created a dragon out of his body. Like, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And every new Guardians or Avengers movie, Groot is at a different stage of his life.
Yeah.
So there is a baby Groot. There was, in the first one, it was
Alpha Groot. I think that's what they call
Is
him.
that what they called that one?
Yeah.
And so you don't necessarily have to be basing your performance off of the former performances.
Not really.
So how did you approach it for this film?
So a lot of it came from James gave some direction on it. So Groot is 20, 21, somewhere in that age range. I knew that he was going to be a lot buffer in this version than he had been in like previous versions. He is not the first Groot. He's the older version of Baby Groot and Teenage Groot, right? Yeah. And so at this point in his life, he sees Star-Lord as his dad. He sees Gamora as his mother. He sees the Guardians as his family. And so he's a young adult version of that wants to protect his family. So that was a lot of what I incorporated in. I knew he's arguably the strongest of all of them. And so just because of all the shit he can do, like, which is just so fun. So he's like the quiet, he talks a lot more in this one than he does in some of the previous ones because he is kind of that younger energy and he's kind of bouncy and, he's kind of like, that's some of the stuff like character-wise that James gave me. And then the rest, I just kind of created my own version of it because I knew like he was going to have like a little bit of a swagger walk, and I've got a little bit of that myself. So like I just kind of like tapped into that and put a little more onto it. And then the rest of it is just like, I'm here to protect everybody. So it was a lot of kind of that energy, and I knew that the VFX team would take it from there.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yeah. And with your line, does James provide a translation of what he's saying? Is it just up to the interpretation of the actors in the moment?
So when you read it, it becomes pretty clear what the context and subtext for each of those lines is. So no, there was no like translation.
Yeah.
But we all knew what each one meant because it's pretty clear. Like, oh hey, he means this specific thing. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, very cool.
Except for and I won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen the movie. Except for Groot's very last line, which was like a super fun secret that I got to do on set, and it was like that I kept very quiet. So that one I got to actually deliver.
Oh wow!
So
that's cool.
Yeah, and that was a cool just moment too, because at the very end, we're kind of towards the end of filming. It's not like our last day, but it's probably like our last week or second to last week, and James comes up and we're doing the scene where like the Guardians are kind of going their separate ways. And after one of the takes, James comes up. They're about to get my coverage. And they're like, James is like, so I have this idea that I maybe want to try. And he told us what the idea was, and like everybody was like, holy crap, man, that's awesome. And he was like, should we try it? We're like, hell yeah, absolutely. What do you mean? So yeah, we got to kind of insert that new line, and I think it worked really well. Like,
That's great.
When we were at the premiere in LA, when Nikki and I, my girlfriend Nikki and I were there, when we were at the premiere in LA, when I knew that line was coming up, I was literally just I was just like, I was looking around, like watching. I'm like, all right, let's see how this lands. And like everybody was like, oh shit, like it was awesome.
Yeah. What was
That's
the
amazing.
what was the energy like in LA at the premiere?
I mean, it was so much excitement and so much love there. You could tell that everybody was just so proud of what was like happening and like what we had created, and everybody was just, it was a celebration. Like everybody was there. There were so many like just amazing actors that I've been a fan of for a long time, and there's so much just talent that's involved in this process. So I mean, it was great. I mean, these are such fun movies too, and like the music is so fun, and you could tell everybody like the entire movie, like that's exactly the way that you would want a premiere to go. Like people were reacting the right ways at the right times to the moments. The moments were hitting. You could hear people crying. You could hear people laughing.
I cried like 5 times.
I did too.
Yeah.
And like that's one of the things too. It's like funny because like with Nikki, when we were there, and there was a really sad moment. There's like a really sad moment. She was already crying, and then one thing's happened, and we're all kind of, it's like me and Nikki and my friend Mark who came, and my friend Giovanni who was in the movie, and she came, and we're all sitting there, and like this sad moment happens, and Nikki's just like. just starts wailing, and I was like, yeah.
We did our job.
Yeah. And like she wasn't the only one. There were sniffles and cries all around the room, and I was like, all right, this worked.
It was hitting.
Yeah, it was hitting the right way, so it was fun.
Yeah.
The movie is so good.
Yeah, it did such a good job.
Really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Everybody listening, go see it. It's amazing. It really is.
Go see it lots. It's fun.
Yeah.
I've seen it 3 times now, and every time it like hits more.
Yeah.
weird.
No, I would definitely go see it again.
Yeah.
It was really good. I'm curious, how long was filming?
I was there for the entire process minus maybe 2 days, and I'd say 7 months.
Wow.
So
wow.
we shot from I booked it in October 2021. I started working like early November 2021, and we ended in May of 2022. So we actually ended, I think, almost an exact year from, I think it was May 5th was like our final day, or 5th or 6th, something in there. And then it premiered like a year later. It like hit the theaters.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, for people listening, there is quite a range as far as like feature films go, quite a range of how long a production shoots for.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be, honestly, some productions, full-length feature films, 1.5 to 2 hours, sometimes they're shot in like a month and a half.
Like I'm doing a production in August, and we're going to be there 3 weeks.
There you go.
So there you go for just context. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's it like shooting at Trilith? What are the facilities like there?
Trilith is state of the art. I mean, it's such a cool, like that's like our true kind of like studio lot in Atlanta, I think. I mean, there are some other ones that are really amazing too, but that's such a big lot. That feels like Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I mean, you need golf carts to get around. You can't, like, if you want to walk from one end to the other, it's going to take you 45 minutes. So it's huge. I think there's like 24 sound stages or something. Maybe more than that, actually.
It's enormous. Yeah. I was there for a meet and greet with Francis Ford Coppola. And
oh, yeah.
it's
Megalopolis.
Yeah. And it's enormous.
Yeah. And so, like, in every sound stage, they've got something working. So, like, I think we had, like, probably, like, 6 or 8 sound stages there. Just because you have,
oh my God,
you have so many, like, I mean, I remember hearing like one of the sets alone was like $20 million or something to construct it, and it was like
the sets and the practical effects on this. I saw that they broke some record for practical effects for makeup or
for makeup.
prosthetics.
Yeah, for prosthetics
in a feature film. It was beautiful what they did on this.
It was.
On this,
I remember
movie.
walking into, so there's one location in the world called Nowhere. And it's like kind of where like the Guardians' home base is, and where Kraglin is kind of like running the city, and Rocket's there, And you see it at the beginning of the movie, and I remember walking onto that set for the first time, and I was like, holy crap, this is insane. Because it was like a 4-leveled thing that was all practical. And like it was all like they had built these amazing like here's a shop, and here's another location, and you go upstairs, and there's like a second level, and there's a third level, and there's a fourth level, and like everything was so crazy. And they used it for the holiday special too. So it's all decorated with like Christmas and like lights and all of this kind of stuff, and trees and Santa Claus and like, and then like the Bowie, the ship that we like the Guardians use, everything in there is practical. You press a button and something over here would work. And it was like, it blew my mind. I was like, what is happening?
That's so cool.
That's
and
amazing.
I appreciate that so much. Like practical effects where you can use them.
It was so cool. Like the first couple of days I was literally just like staring at things in between takes. Like, what is this? I was like, you guys are so talented. This is crazy.
Yeah. Oh man.
Which made like, you know, the set decoration and like the construction crews and like, you know, all of everybody for set deck and everything. Like they were like, oh yeah, let me show you again. Like they were like so proud of it.
Cool.
I was like, you should be, man. This is awesome.
Absolutely should be. That's insane. I'm geeking out so hard inside right now. Like it's, oh my God, I love this stuff so much.
It was fun, man.
What was your favorite set?
I think that Nowhere was my favorite set.
Yeah.
Just because it was so grand. Like it's the biggest, like most intricate set I think I've ever seen. But the only thing I didn't like about it was that the floor was like sand or dirt or something. And so every day we'd be in there, and then like when we left, we'd be like clogged up from like just dust inhalation.
Yeah.
So you like blow your nose and you'd be like, oh, I'm like full of dust right now. So it was like, that was fun. Yeah. That was the only, like, you'd be like coughing after working on that set all day. It was like,
We the last film that Joe and I made before we left LA was a Western.
Oh boy.
And so we were in Santa Clarita, and you know, it's outside and just sand everywhere. And yeah, I mean, I still have some of the props and wardrobe from that, and like,
covered.
The gun that I had for that movie, parts of it are still clogged with sand.
My gosh,
like,
that's
yeah,
hilarious.
so yeah.
So does this? I can spoil this because it's in the Christmas special. Does this mean that you are one of the least interesting How Many Degrees to Kevin Bacon?
Yeah. So what does that make me?
That's
0?
one. That's
Yeah,
zero.
yeah.
0 or 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to wheel Kevin Bacon out in a box. That was fun. Yeah.
I love that Christmas special.
Yeah, it was super fun.
Really good.
And it's like I've always been a fan of like Christmas specials, holiday specials in general, because like they don't make many of them.
No.
And it's like, it's so fun. It's like got such a cool energy, and it's all Drax and Mantis kind of doing their thing. And it's like they have such fun energy together.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and like Kevin is so nice. He's like, just, I mean, he's been a legend for, you know, ever, you know, 80s. So it's like, you know, he's just so nice, and like it was just super cool. I got to work. I got to work with him. I got to work with Sylvester Stallone. It was like super fun. Like had like a whole scene with him. It didn't make the cut, sadly, but it was like that was like a fun like, just, I don't know, what a cool thing. But yeah, I mean, the holiday special was so like, when we walked onto that Nowhere set and they had it all decorated, I was like, oh my God, like I didn't think this set could be cooler.
So cool.
It was all
beautiful.
practical.
It
Yeah.
was.
You could tell they had an army working on that movie.
Yeah.
When we watched it, and you know, you get that first glimpse of Nowhere, and it's all decorated, we were just kind of like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm like automatically just in for this. Let's go.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about James Gunn as a director. What was it like working with him?
So I've said this a couple of times, because I think that James is kind of like a mad scientist. I mean, he's a genius. He's a creative genius. And like, I can't imagine like those first pitch meetings for Guardians, like with Marvel, because you have to just go, okay, we're just going to let you try it and see what works. And like, the thing is like, it seems like everything he touches turns to gold too. So from this to Peacemaker to, I mean, basically everything that he's done. So like, he's got a super strong vision for what he wants. And he's going to find a way to get it. And like, he trusts all of his actors. I mean, he hires people that are really good at what they do in every regard. And so it's like, you could just tell that like, he has a love for this material. You could tell that like, he came up reading these comics and just like loving this stuff. So you could tell that like, he has such like love and care for the way that he like crafts these things, and it really comes out in the way that like the things are finished products, because I mean it's just so beautiful and so fun, and like the music choices are always so fun and like lend themselves to the scene. And so yeah, I mean he's brilliant at what he does.
Yeah.
Gotta give him love for that.
He does seem to hire people that he really trusts, and it seems like he has a little bit of a fluidity with his directing style where he's open to, I'm not going to say improvisation. Maybe it is improvisation, but it's that things can change.
Oh, he 100% lets people improv, especially like Chris.
Yeah.
I mean, he would just let Chris go.
Yeah.
Because like basically every take he was doing something completely different, and I was like, this is first of all just like a master class in watching. But yeah, I mean he just lets him, and sometimes he'd be like, oh yeah, I got an idea, and he would just like whisper something to Chris, and then just kind of like Chris would be like, what? Okay, I'll try it. and then he would deliver it and be the funniest thing. And then they do the same thing with like Dave as Drax, because they'd be like, okay, try this line, and he'd try something, or he just riff and come up with something himself, which was super fun. So yeah, there was a lot of improv. I mean, there's a script for sure, and we make sure we hit that, because there was a lot of stuff that got, you know, even from the script that I don't think made the final cut. But yeah, there's definitely the room and the trust there with his actors to kind of create, and like that was really fun to see.
That's amazing. Wow.
Nice to hear.
Yeah.
You brought up the music choices.
Yeah.
And that is one thing through all of these movies that I have just wondered, like, what is the budget for like buying all these huge songs?
That I have no idea, but I mean, they must have. I mean, it's Marvel. They've got more money than God. But
yeah,
like, you know, it's one of those things where like the cool thing is like they're playing those on set.
Really?
Yeah. So like you know, I had like Dog Days of Summer like stuck in my head for like 4 months. I
love
think.
that.
And like the old 97s who were in the holiday special.
Yeah.
Their Christmas Time Is Here song. I had that stuck in my head. I think I could still sing it because you know you're playing it over and over and over for every take. And so it was that, and then I mean they're like for some of the sad scenes we had this beautiful high operatic number that was playing that like really anchored us in and like really like just kind of grounded that emotion. And then I mean the music was, I don't think for every scene, but for a lot of the scenes we had the music playing too, because they're like, this is what's probably going to be here.
And
that is super cool.
Did it pretty closely match what was in the final cut, or did he go through a couple of songs where it's like A, B, C, I'm going to go with one of these, let me see how you react to them?
Some songs were the finals for sure. Some we didn't actually hear on set, so we didn't know what was going to be tied to those scenes. And then there was one, like the operatic piece, it wasn't in the place that we played it. You know, when we were like doing the scene, it wasn't in that same place. They inserted it into another scene that was very similar. So, and it worked. I think it worked better actually there, so it makes sense to move it.
That's wonderful. And I want to know, what did you learn about yourself as a performer through your experience on this project?
Love that.
That's a fun question. I think on this job, this is like a kind of a fun thing to say, but I feel like I can hang. I feel like I can like hang with some of the big boys sometimes. So like that's kind of like a fun experience because as an actor, a lot of times you have like imposter syndrome where you're like, oh man, I'm not good enough to do this or whatever. And so this was kind of one of those things where it's like, no, I got to do this the entire movie with like some of the biggest talent in the world. And like, that's pretty cool. And like some of my stuff doesn't make the cut. So it's like, I had a little more like freedom.
Yeah.
But it just made me go, oh, I'm ready to take this to the next level and like to do this and for my stuff to make it. So like, that was pretty cool. And also every time that I get to work on like a really cool big budget project like this, it reminds me of there's nothing else that I'd rather do. Like this is the thing for me. And I love this business and I love the people that are in this business. I love the experiences that we have. I love the fact that it's like, we're like carnies. Like this is like a carnival lifestyle in so many ways because I mean, we come in, we perform, we pack up our wagons, we go to the next town and we perform. And like, I mean, it's
trauma bonding.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Back to the trauma bonding, full circle. So like, I don't know. I love that part of the community, and Yeah, I think that's something that I picked up on this one.
That's
Pretty
cool. And the community in Atlanta is smaller than a place like Los Angeles. When you were on set, were there a few people that you were like, "Oh, hey, I know you," or was it all meeting new faces?
No, it was a mix. So like, I definitely knew several of the actors that were on, because I every day I'd go and I'd look at the call sheet and like, oh, my friend's on this, and so like I'd go and find them, and then there were people from the crew that were Atlanta based that I'd worked with on other movies or other TV shows or whatever in the past, and that was really cool because I had a very not random but like very impromptu run in with like a guy that I'd worked with on another movie, and he's like, "Hey man, what are you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm playing Groot." He's like, "What the I was like, "Yeah, man." I'm like, "I've been on the whole time," and like I hadn't seen him because we'd worked on different like stages or something, I guess. And so like that was super fun, and then like seeing several actors that I knew here in town, and then meeting new people, which was really fun that I've like gotten really close with, and then like yeah, of course, like working with like people that are superstars and legends and people that I've watched my whole life, it's like that's really cool too. And people that like I've never worked with, I'm just a big fan of their work. They're just super good in everything they do. So yeah, it was like a big mix of people that I knew and then was introduced to and that I knew of.
Yeah.
So it was like it was a good mix of that.
I'm always telling people that you can learn so much from just being on set. A lot of people ask, how do I get into this? How do I get started? Should I go to film school? And I say, if you can find your way onto some set, you're going to learn so much. You were there for 7 months. What did you learn just from observing the flow of this film?
I think I learned just how many professionals there are in this. Like everybody is so specialized in what they do. That was something that was really, really cool to me. Just like all of like I've worked on other jobs before and like been like, wow, these guys are really good at their specific thing on crew. This actually comes back to some of the like the theater technique stuff. There was one scene happens in the High Evolutionary's chamber between Star-Lord and the High Evolutionary. And there's kind of this moment, this interchange between Chris and Chakudi, where they're basically like Star-Lord is like angry because he knows what the High Evo did to Rocket. And so basically there's almost like this kind of like Meisner interchange where it's just like a repetition kind of thing between Chris and Chuck, where Chuck just kept feeding him his line. He's like, "Why are you so angry? Why are you so angry?" And then Chris would respond with, "Because we know what you did to our friend." And it was just like, they didn't even plan it. They just kept doing it. And it was like watching like a tennis match. I was like this, like the whole time, because I'm right in the middle of them. And it was like one of those cool things where I'm like, that's the moment where that theater style technique works. And it like really grounds it because you get to find all of these different, and they just kept the camera rolling. Just kept it rolling. And like, it's so many different takes to choose from, I'm sure. And it also helped Chris to get there, like to connect emotionally in a cool way, which I thought was really cool. And it was like so generous of Chuck as the actor to give him that line over and over. He wasn't even on camera. He was, off. And so it was just for Chris's coverage, and he was just there. He was just dialed in. I was like, I already do that and like that, but then I was like, that's why you do that, to like be the generous actor and like to help your co-star.
Yes.
And like I was like, okay, respect went through the roof, and I was like, okay, that's why we do it, and we stay checked in for like our scene partners. So that was a cool moment. Yeah.
That's super cool, man.
Yeah.
I love that.
And that's the first time that I've ever seen it. I was like, oh, I'm watching a masterclass right now. That's really cool. That's why you're generous. Well, plenty of reasons, but that's one very prime example of being a generous actor to help your castmate get where they need to get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you said, he was off camera.
Yeah.
But
there.
locked in.
Yeah.
I love that
Super
so
cool.
much.
Yeah.
Oh,
super
man. Cool. I love that. And he's so good too, though. Like,
I mean, he's that guy. That guy's a superstar. That guy's a
scary
superstar.
good. That's a great way to like. It's his high, his like emotional highs in this movie are insane. Mm-hmm. Like you hate this guy.
Yeah.
Like he's.
And if you meet Chuck, he's like the nicest human being. Too.
I can imagine.
Like, he's just like the nicest person. It was so funny.
Oh,
shows why it's so important to have a good villain
in
these. If you look back at all of the Marvel movies, the best ones are the ones that have villains like
that have like a strong villain like that. Yeah.
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 Was there any ways that you, in particular, your theater background helped you get into the physicality of this character?
Yeah, I would say so. There are like specific theater courses where you learn about the movement of a character. Like you're pretending to be a snake, or I don't know, whatever. You're like you're doing weird stuff. You're rolling around on the floors. You're making weird noises, just to get in your body. And so there were several moments when I was on set, like doing things, or I've watched other people doing motion capture and performance capture, where I'm like, oh, that's where that ties in, where you get to like kind of craft and create and like fully embody the character, which is like really cool. So yeah, I would say that kind of stuff where it's like there's not a lot of like the mental like connection there for some of this stuff. It's like you're just in your body and you're getting to like perform in that way, and that was like really cool, kind of like a dance.
Yeah.
And when you were watching the movie, how much of it is like 1-to-1 what you were doing there?
I would say 85%, maybe
That's
more.
Great.
Yeah, I mean,
so those dance moves at the end were you?
Nope, that's all James.
Oh,
That's
what?
all James.
What?
Yeah. James does all the dancing for Groot. He's done all of it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Even as like the little twig Groot that's like
Yeah.
regrowing, that's all James.
Oh.
As Baby Groot, the opening credits of
Yeah.
Guardians 2, that's James.
Oh, wow.
You can actually see footage of him like dancing and like doing this stuff, and then like they turned that into Groot. So he always does the Groot dances. I prepared. I was like ready. I was like, all right, let's do it. And then like we're about to go, and he's like, all right, you can step on. I was like, wait, what? And he's like, oh no, I always do the dancing. And I was like, oh, okay, okay, cool.
Did he put a suit on too?
Oh no, he literally was just wearing what he was like in like a hoodie and like a band T-shirt or something, like
That's
jeans.
cool.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And it's him, and it's Sean who plays Rocket. So it's literally just him and his brother dancing on set. And I was like, oh, that's super sweet. It's like that's like fun.
That's wonderful. Man,
Yeah.
It's amazing. This is usually the part of the show where we ask people, where can the audience find out more about you? But your movie's in theaters right now.
Yeah, the movie's in theaters. So
Find him in Guardians 3.
yeah, you can do that. It's on there. I got a couple other things coming out pretty soon. I got a movie coming out on Netflix called They Clone Tyrone. So that's going to be really fun. It's got John Boyega, Teyonah Parris. It's got Jamie Foxx. A lot of cool talent. It's going to be a really interesting movie. You guys can follow me on Instagram at Austin Freeman. And then, yeah, I got several projects that I'm starting on this year that'll be out probably next year sometime.
Amazing.
Stay tuned.
Very cool, man.
This was great. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you
man.
for
Thanks for having me on, guys.
coming in and chatting with us about this. Do you have any other big questions, Torrin, that you wanted to cover?
I don't think I do. I appreciate just talking to another actor about acting.
Yeah.
Like,
It's fun
I
sometimes.
think you saw it on my face of
Yeah.
just how jazzed
you're geeking,
I was.
man.
I'm
You're geeking.
like, I'm freaking out. But
You guys can't see it, but he's like dancing over here.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
Baby
Baby
Groot
Groot.
dancing.
He's doing a 1-to-1 dance. Well, you learned it. Yeah.
But yeah, I really mean that though. Like, I'm so happy for you, and
Thanks, man.
it is just it's so nice to talk about acting with someone who shares similar sentiments and the passion for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to. I've never thought about doing anything else. Like,
Yeah.
this is it.
Yeah.
So
We got to make it work somehow.
yeah,
Yeah.
and someone who is on the same brainwave on technique and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
appreciates all of that. I don't know. Thanks, man. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, brother. Of course.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah.
It's
Thanks,
great
guys.
chatting with you. And please come back the next time you have a project out. If you want to come back and talk about the Netflix project, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
I'm
that'd be
sure
cool.
we'll be seeing you again.
Yeah, we'll be back.
All right. Well, thank you so much, bud.
All right. Thanks, guys.